Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Conversations with Sophia. It has been a while because we've been working on so many exciting projects. One of them have been working alongside this incredible organization company called Hertility Health. And today we actually are back with a special edition with Helen O'Neill, who is the co-founder and CEO of Hertility. Hertility is a women's health company supporting women from menstruation through menopause with comprehensive at-home testing, telemedicine, and treatment. Hi, Helen. How are you?
Well, thank you. How are you?
I'm fine. Thank you for joining us on Conversations with Sophia. So, Helen, you are the founder or co-founder and CEO of Fertility Health. What is your personal story and journey with respect to health and fertility?
So it's been a long journey, both I guess mostly professionally. I really started with a background in genetics and then specialized in women's health and reproduction when I moved to London from Ireland 17 years ago. Although everyone says I have not done much to get rid of my accent, which I'm very proud to say.
I love it.
And but exactly. And I did a master's in prenatal genetics and fetal medicine, which was a very intense 1 year, really learning about just all of the incredible ways that we can make babies, support babies, nurture babies. And then following that, I did a PhD, so continued my research looking at ovarian formation and the genetics that are involved and the genes that are involved in the earliest forms of life to ensure that we either have an ovary or a testis that forms within us. And so I have this deep appreciation and fascination for reproduction and how we procreate and how lucky each of us are individually to be here, and how difficult the journey can be for so many. Um, in a strange way, I think when you learn about all the ways that things can go wrong, it makes you appreciate things all the more. I think when you're learning about genetics and fetal medicine, you actually look at any baby and you go, it's incredible that you're here. And you learn about all of the risks, which can be very daunting. And in fact, learning about all of the risks that are involved when it comes to fertility and infertility is really what inspired me and encouraged me to create something that enabled people to actually check in on their reproductive health. And that was because I'd essentially spent, 5 years lecturing students about reproductive science, women's health. And within that, you're essentially lecturing about all of the risks, like what are the things that we are privy to, prone to, what are the common pitfalls clinically and societally. And when you are a researcher yourself, you can either take it two ways. You either think you are going to be the one at risk, or you can say, "Oh, not me. I'm not within within that demographic." But as I got older, knowing that the most predominant risks that we face when it comes to infertility, or the most predominant cause of infertility that we're seeing now, is age related. Every time I would present or be at a conference on fertility, I would see this graph which shows this devastating decline in fertility as we get older. And I just would look at this graph thinking, oh, I'm in the red zone. And yet I had no way of knowing where I was at. There was no way of me just checking. And so that really led me on a kind of a personal journey to say, I personally, all my colleagues were like, you should just freeze your eggs.
Mm.
Um, and I, being at the other side of that, which was that I'd been present for egg collections. I had frozen eggs myself, albeit not human, in the lab. I kind of just thought, like, surely there's something less extreme than that right now. Surely I can just check in and say, well, maybe I'm okay. Um, Even down to the fact that I was trying to rationalize things from a scientific perspective and a genetic perspective, thinking, well, I'm the youngest of six children.
Mm.
Maybe I'm okay. Like looking at my mom, I was like, maybe I'm okay. Um, but feeling like if I have all of this information, all of this access to experts, all of this knowledge and education, and I feel lost, I can't imagine how anybody else must feel in this position, just worrying, wondering, and not knowing where to turn. And then from a financial position, thinking, That's all very fine to wave a magic wand and say freeze your eggs. But I didn't, I'm an academic. I don't have the money to do that. And then the longer term implications of what that would mean to me meant that I really just wanted to know. And so we actually do know scientifically that there are distinct markers of fertility or your ovarian reserve, whether it's getting a scan and looking at your ovaries and how many eggs are there, or combining that with measuring your blood to look for a specific marker called AMH, and then saying, well, what are all the other things that could put us at risk? And so that's really what started me almost 5 years ago on this journey to building Hertility and saying, okay, let's think about this
Mm.
from a first person perspective. What would I want? What would my friends want? We'd want something that we can do privately. I don't know anyone who doesn't get in front of a clinician and alter the answers they might tell that person, but depending on how they actually feel or that person makes them feel. And that's nothing against any doctor. It's just that when we answer questions about our reproductive health, our fertility, our sex life, any infections, any previous medical diagnoses, anything that's like a physical symptom relating to your reproductive health, your vulva, anything, it's deeply uncomfortable to share that with a complete stranger. And so for me, the idea that we could create an interface that allowed you to input some of the most important aspects of your data into that non-judgmentally, without looking someone in the eyes, at any time of day or night from home, that meant that what we were going to create was something a lot more reliable because it was there at any time and accessible. Um, and so much of that was like a personal mission. But from a professional lens, I looked at it like this big challenge, like a new research project that I really wanted to put in everything into. Because I thought, if, as a geneticist, we look across so many different genomes to extrapolate the root cause of a genetic illness. But when it came to women's health, the data was just inexistent. And the excuses for that lack of data were that, these are complex conditions. And they're not. Nothing is as complex as some of the things that we have answers for and solutions for. And certainly the prevalence of these conditions mean we have no excuse that there shouldn't be data for this. And
Mm.
so that's how it started, was to say, how can we ask all of the relevant questions that would lead us to a potential diagnosis in an individual, but take into account not generalized statistics, take into account individual risk factors, your genetic background, your ethnicity. We know that women from different ethnicities have different risk factors. Let's include that. You tell me you're from somewhere that has a higher risk factor. Let's stratify you and make sure that we prioritize you as a person and a potential patient. And so that's really been an ongoing journey to build out essentially predictive algorithms so that we can get somebody to a diagnosis and to clinical care much sooner through a series of online questions, and then a tailored blood test that they can do from home, and then all of the after support that we've built.
What you've done is incredible. You've created a safe space for women. I want to hear about the milestones, the challenges, your lessons, because it's quite disruptive what you've done, and we're very big on the word disruptors. So, so what has that
Um,
been like?
well, I think it's important to mention like both the personal and professional milestones always, because at the end of the day, we look at organizations and we forget that there's people
Mhm.
behind it and there's human beings and there's so much commitment and sacrifice
Mhm.
to doing all of these things. And so when I incorporated Hertility, I was 3 months pregnant with my daughter, and everyone says, "Were you mad?" And partly maybe I was, but partly I've never felt a greater drive to do something and to create something while creating someone than I did at that time. So yes, I look back and I think, I don't know how I did this. But also I'm incredibly grateful for the fact that I could actually, and it inspired me more than anything else could have, to keep going actually. So that was one milestone, was incorporating when pregnant, delivering and launching a test and delivering and launching a baby, and then nurturing and growing a company while nurturing and growing a human. And those are things that I feel personally quite proud of, because I think I spent a long time thinking that this was something that would get in my way. And
Mm.
I resented that. I resented the idea that having a family would prevent me from progressing in my career or prevent me from doing the things that I wanted to do professionally. And instead, it has amplified, inspired, and encouraged me in every way. And I've learned more from that experience of going through pregnancy than I ever did in any textbook. So I think the milestones were launching the test, getting into the hands of women, hearing feedback that we've given people results, diagnoses, and help. Those are the things I celebrate. You know, people now in the team talk about numbers, and I always correct them and say these aren't numbers, these are people. And what's comforting to me is I look at everything. I am so in depth so close to everything, and seeing that almost the highest frequency of website visitors and people doing that health assessment are between the hours of like 9 at night and 3 in the morning. And that is when we slow down. It's when we stop. It's when our fears creep in. It's when we allow time for ourselves. We spend our days working, giving to others, giving to everyone around us, whether it's our parents, our children, our friends, our work, our social lives, and we don't ever give to ourselves. But it's in those midnight hours, in the silence, when you aren't in meetings, that your fears creep in, that your wonders, arrive. And to be able to be a source of information and answers in those hours, to me, I'm very grateful we can be, and proud that we can support women in their hours of need.
You started a company while you were pregnant. Wow. Well, I mean, wow, I get it.
You get it. You've been there. You've done that.
Exactly. I totally get it. Like we're very similar in that, you're running a company that you're very passionate about. This is a vision, this is something you see, and you're also doing something really incredible, which is also creating a life. How did those two aspects influence the things that you did with Hertility in the very beginning stages? And also, how did your experience was your experience like as a female founder within this space? Were there challenges,
Um, I
lessons?
remember sitting so uncomfortably meeting investors with a
Mm-hmm.
coat on my lap, trying to cover, because I knew that they were never going to invest in somebody who was pregnant, and feeling so grateful when lockdown happened, because it meant we had this box that we could
Yeah.
appear in, and that nobody else, you weren't choosing to not go, but that everyone in the world was also held back. And it was, as bad as it is to say that this was a turning point
Mm.
to enable and liberate mums, it was to be able to do something from home and not feel like you were being left behind. We're already at a disadvantage. We're already funded less. But it's not just men that doubt women's ability when they have children, it's women.
Mm.
Women have equal lack of faith that other women can do it. And it's because we perpetuate this message that mums can't do work while they have children. And for me, I think it actually saved my sanity,
Mhm.
being able to use my brain for the entire time.
Totally get
And
it.
as much as you say, I don't know how you still functioned. I was exhausted. And I was like, well, I did, but I maintained my sense of identity. And I think that if for many, and everybody is different. I'm definitely not suggesting everyone do this, because everyone is different. Some people love getting up in the morning and going for a run at 6. I can't
Mm.
think of anything worse. We're all different creatures, and different things motivate us and reward us in different ways. And I found it rewarding to hold my baby, feed her while using my brain. It
Mm.
kept me sane. And I think that is just testament to the fact that we like to tell women that things should be a certain way, and here's your maternity leave and take it off.
Mhm.
And don't do anything else, and don't dream of doing anything else. But I think a lot of women report, a loss of identity, a loss of belonging, they just feel like they're not, you know, themselves anymore. And everyone loses their identity to a certain extent. It's not that you lose it, you change it. You're a mum now.
It's
You
true.
forever change who you are. You are no longer as, sole operating being. You are responsible for this incredibly delicate
Mm-hmm. I
being, and that's a big role change. I
think
think that's a big promotion. It's difficult for someone. And so for me, I just everyone's individual, but it was what kept me going. I remember sitting up um one night actually correcting a thesis for somebody's PhD, and all I could think, because this PhD, well, albeit tangential, this PhD was about how we can use gene therapy to improve cystic fibrosis, which affects the
mm,
lungs. And I sat in bed with my baby on my lap, reading about it and thinking, my grandmother lost two babies to cystic fibrosis. And here I am, so blessed to have a baby on my lap and to be contributing to potential causes or cures for something, or at least reading about the advances in a disease that affected so many lives. And thinking at that moment how unfair the terminology that we use is. And what I mean by that is we say quite dismissively, she lost a baby.
mm,
She didn't lose a baby. Her baby died.
true.
And I think we soften language to make it easy for ourselves, retrospectively, to digest tragedy. But when you're in the position of thinking, how did she cope? It's so, so different. And I think we often glaze over people's events, especially maternal events. We need to face tragedy and face the injustice that women have dealt with and continue to deal with when it comes to our reproductive health, and maternal loss.
Fertility launched two reports, the Inequality report and then the Black Women's Reproductive Health report. And you've talked about I would say maybe even the injustice that women face when it comes to our health. What inspired the Inequality report, starting with the Inequality report, and then we can move to the Black Women's Health report. Are they interwoven? Like, are they linked? And what was the aim of creating this report? Did you achieve what you set out to achieve when you created this report? And what can be done better?
So the Inequality report was intended to be a guide that highlighted statistics, but did more than just highlight statistics, because people get annoyed at being told the stats. They're
Mhm,
depressing, they're sad, they make
mhm,
you angry. The fact that there are not the same outcomes for different individuals. Like, why would we have differences in medical outcomes
mhm,
depending on the color of your skin? That's infuriating,
mhm,
especially when it comes for, if there were higher risks for certain things, fine. But when it actually boils down to systemic racism, that's infuriating. And so the report is intended as an educational guide, going through everything from contraception to menstruation to fibroids to infertility to menopause, and provide reports, but also highlight the incredible work of others. We were very aware that, we as an organization have so much data that we want to use for good, to change different outcomes, to say, here's what we see, let's improve things using a data first approach. Um, but knowing that there are some incredible organizations who are doing so much work on each of these topics, whether it's maternal health, whether it's contraception, whether it's the fibroids. And so highlighting their work, because, you don't want to step on toes, but you definitely don't want to say, like, we are doing all of this work, when actually collectively there are so many amazing charities, organizations, and groups that are working so hard. And so to be able to shine a light on them, we lift each other up.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, so the report is really to emphasize that. To me, the report was sticking a flag in the sand. It's nothing to say, nothing final. This is the start of a journey for us. To say that we as an organization have made a promise and a pledge to not safeguard our data, but to use it to actively promote, or not promote, to actively share what the current statistics are, and then to really just highlight the research that we're committed to doing to contribute to change. We noted that from the Human Fertilization and Embryology Authority, we know that Black women are less they're worse when it comes to fertility treatment,
Mm.
and so and presented at a much later stage in their fertility journey for fertility treatment. And so we wanted to know why that was, and whether in the absence of that barrier to having to go to a fertility clinic and physically go to a clinic in and actually having something, that you can do from a
Yeah,
health assessment from
yeah.
home and a blood test you can do from home, did we witness the same trends? And in fact we do. And so, in understanding that even when you remove a physical clinic and remove some of the barriers to entry, that they are still there, and that white women tend to be on average 32 years of age and actively trying to conceive for 2 years before approaching help. Black women are actively trying to conceive for almost 5 years and are on average 37 years old
Mm.
before they will ask for help. Means that we need to do more to reach people, to say help is here, and to have more conversations, and we need to promote awareness. There's so much that can be done, and for me, my overarching goal is to create a resource that enables individual groups to say, how can we reach people in more places? And so when we had that Black Women's Health Initiative launch,
Which
we
is
invited as many
incredible, by the
people.
way.
Yeah, and I was so grateful to have you on the panel to talk about real world experiences. Let move away from the stats. This is my story. This
Mm.
is what happened to me, because it's in that other people then share their stories. And as you rightfully said, it's in the power of storytelling that you reach people. You will never convey the same message by telling somebody the frequency of distribution of pathology or their risk factors or the
Mm.
prevalence, just won't. It's not the same. It's about an individual story and how that might maybe mirror your life to a
Mhm.
certain extent. So that is ongoing, and we are continuing to just monitor data, interview people, and hopefully publish soon. And I want to mention Ruby Relton, who was an incredible driving force behind this initiative, from and the
Amazing.
report.
Yes, Ruby. We all know Ruby. We love Ruby. She's incredible. The moment I came across Hertility, I'm just like, oh my God, this is incredible. And so I always try to talk about it with rooftops. And then it makes me happy when I also hear other people say, oh, they know Hertility, or they've been able to get a product from Hertility. What innovations do you think that Hertility has done and introduced? Because I want you to kind of amplify what you've done in terms of you've done a lot of stuff. So now, what do you think these innovations have done and how have they impacted the community, women, society at large, and the femtech space? And what do they do about addressing the challenges that women face?
Today, we just submitted 6 novel pieces of research to be presented at the European Society for Reproduction and Embryology.
Oh, wow.
That to me is kind of just shedding a light on our active commitment to contributing to ongoing research and science. We are scientists. Everyone says this is my happy place. But it's because that was the reason we started. That was the reason, was to create change. It wasn't to create products. It was a conduit to better understanding women, using data in a way that can transform lives, constantly monitoring the data to say what could be better. And let's face it, a lot could be better in women's health. Currently, there's 700,000 women on a wait list just to see a gynecologist in the UK. And this is all, stemming from the fact that during lockdown, all non-essential clinics were closed, and that meant all gynecology clinics were closed. And that shows you just the hint of the systemic infringement of women's health needs, on every level. The product itself began as wanting to answer a simple question: can I tell if I'm fertile?
Mm.
Can I do so through a test? And has really just this snowballed into a far more broad gynecological tool. And what I mean by that is that when we started asking questions that were pertained to somebody's risk of infertility, Well, actually, what we needed to take into account really was questions that might lead to a suspected diagnosis for any one of 18 now of the most frequent conditions that affect our reproductive health and our fertility. And so, although we started as a way of assessing your fertility, the Hertility health test now can screen for 18 of the most prevalent conditions relating to reproductive health and fertility, including all of your hormones. And we see that there is a high percentage of individuals with hormone imbalance, and that to me is outside of just routine gynae diagnostics. Those are, individual things that really impact our life because our hormones impact them so much. And so for me, the next step is about continuing on that health journey. So once we build the test and could give people their results, we wanted to be able to say, okay, well, actually in 47% of cases, people need to get an ultrasound scan. They need to look at their uterus, their ovaries. And so providing that service was another milestone. And then providing the ability for somebody to get a prescription. Again, sometimes we're at our most vulnerable when anything to do with down there makes you feel very vulnerable
Yeah,
and
yeah, it does. Hmm.
and ashamed to a certain extent, which is annoying and it shouldn't be, but
Yeah, the shame.
there's shame, and that's what we see constantly is people are afraid, they're embarrassed to approach somebody. So we built on a full telemedicine service so you could speak to somebody really quickly, and that our clinicians can now, when you're speaking to them, should you need a prescription, order your prescription and it will arrive at your house that day or the following day, depending on when you had the call. And to me, that is what is so desperately lacking from our current health is like the the instant action that we've all come to anticipate and expect from everything else in our lives. We order everything from Amazon and it
Right.
arrives.
Yeah, yeah.
And yet, when it comes to our health, we're left waiting and we're left in the dark. So, being able to transform that and enable people to get the help they need um, is the main part of well, it sounds so diminishing to say a product, but the main part of our mission, actually.
How can we not feel shame in talking about our needs and our health in that regard? And what can women do in terms of reclaiming that power? Because when you feel shame, it's almost like you lose sort of power, you feel powerless. And
Yeah.
so, what would you say for women regarding their health in terms of talking about their experiences and their stories and not feeling shame about their bodies and about the things that affect them?
It's about ownership of your own health journey. It's about not asking permission. It's not seeking someone's advice, but being able to get it from home without the additional discomfort of getting on the train or the tube or the bus,
Mm.
going to a strange place, sitting in front of a stranger. I think removing all those barriers that make you feel vulnerable and empowering yourself with information that you have decided to take, to read, to understand. Even the fact that a lot of in-person appointments, people say that 70% of information that is given in an in-person doctor's appointment goes over your head. And so being able to just have that for you and you only,
Yeah.
to me, is that first step to reducing shame because you are the driving force behind getting information and then, seeking information and then getting it. And the second is around education. I think the reason all over our kind of branding and imagery is real bodies, real skin. I
Yeah.
want to see rolls, stretch marks, real bodies. We are all human being, nothing photoshopped. But the
Mhm.
only thing that we overlay on our images is real anatomy. And so getting my anatomy textbooks and saying, can we get these redrawn? And being proud to show images of the reproductive anatomy because it's the most powerful thing in the world. And just starting to familiarize with all of that anatomy, I think means that when you have a closer understanding of something, you're less afraid of it. When you don't understand something, you're afraid of it. It doesn't matter what it is. You have a fear to talk about it. You have a fear to address it. You have a fear to just acknowledge it if you don't understand it. And so, starting bit by bit to educate on our anatomy, on its function, on our menstrual health, is key to removing any of that stigma.
Amazing. Thank you, Helen. You have been so insightful as usual. And as always, learning a lot from you, learning a lot from your journey and also the journey of fertility, the powerful work you're doing. You're not overrating. What's the word? What's that word? That's the,
Not overreacting.
yeah, you're not overreacting.
I
I love
love
it. Yeah.
it.
But anytime I see it, I always smile like, okay, yes, this is true. It's true. So yeah, thank you so much for coming on our show. And for those of you who not know, I don't know if there's anyone who's listening that might not know, but in case for our new viewers, if you would like to find out more and know more about Hertility, you can visit their website, which is going to be in the description of this episode as well. And you can follow them as well. You can follow Helen on LinkedIn. And follow the journey as well. And if you would like to find out more about some of the innovative products and missions that they are all about, all the details will be included in the description of this episode as well. Thanks again, Helen, for joining us on Conversations with
Thank you so
Sophia.
much for
And
having
don't
me.
forget to all you women, reclaim your power, do not feel shame, and embrace your health and be very informed and educated about your journey.